In the heart of Australia, where the red earth meets the endless sky, a strange experiment began, one that sounded more like madness than science. They took thousands of tons of discarded sheep wool, once destined for landfills, and buried it under vast stretches of dead, cracked soil. Farmers called it a desperate act. Scientists called it an ecological gamble. But no one expected what came next. The idea was born out of crisis. For decades, Australia's farmlands had been drying out. Droughts intensified, pastures turned to dust, and the land, stripped by overgrazing, lost its ability to recover. At the same time, the sheep industry faced a mounting waste problem. Mountains of low-grade wool that couldn't be sold or processed economically. One researcher looked at those piles and saw not waste, but potential. Wool, after all, is nature's perfect material, biodegradable, absorbent and rich in nitrogen and carbon. What if it could do what fertilizer and irrigation could not, restore the soil's life from beneath the surface? It was a wild idea, but Australia has always been a land of bold experiments. In 2021, a small group of agricultural scientists and farmers decided to test it. They buried thick layers of wool beneath barren fields where nothing had grown for years. The wool mats would act like underground sponges, holding moisture from rare rains and feeding microbes as they slowly decomposed. It was a form of natural engineering, a quiet rebellion against the desert. For months, nothing happened. The land remained grey and lifeless. Critics mocked the project, calling it burying hope with wool. But then, in the second year, something extraordinary began. When the rains came, they didn't vanish into dust. The wool had held them, kept them near the roots where new life could take hold. The fields turned green almost overnight, microbes multiplied, worms returned, and the soil, once sterile, began to breathe again. Within 3 years, vegetation density in the test plots increased by over 400%. What was once wasteland had become pasture once more. The buried wool wasn't just fertilizer, it was a catalyst for rebirth. The science behind the transformation was as elegant as it was simple. The wool enriched the soil naturally, releasing a steady stream of nitrogen, carbon, and sulfur as it broke down. Its intricate fibers trapped precious water molecules that otherwise would have evaporated under the brutal Australian sun. For the first time in decades, local farmers watched native grasses return, not just imported crops that struggled to survive. The transformation was quiet, slow, but utterly unstoppable. Satellite images began to show patches of unexpected green across central New South Wales and South Australia, in places officially declared ecologically dead. The scientific community was stunned. Could waste wool, something once burned or buried as garbage, become the foundation of a new approach to ecosystem recovery? The data delivered a resounding yes. Each hectare treated with wool absorbed up to 60% more rainfall, produced nearly double the biomass, and required no chemical fertilizers whatsoever. In a world poisoned by synthetics, the land was healing itself with what it had always known, nature's own fiber. By 2024, the project expanded beyond a mere scientific trial. Agricultural cooperatives began collecting low-grade wool from shearing stations nationwide, shipping it to degraded farmlands where teams of workers rolled it out under protective layers of sand and soil. It wasn't just an experiment anymore, it had become a movement, a shared vision for a greener future. "We're rebuilding the land with the same animals that once fed it," said one farmer, his voice filled with a newfound sense of purpose. "Sheep gave us wool. Now the wool gives us life." But there was another discovery no one expected, a hidden benefit that amplified the project's impact. As the buried wool decomposed, it captured large amounts of carbon dioxide from the surrounding soil, locking it into stable organic compounds. Environmental analysts began calling it a double miracle. Not only was it regenerating damaged ecosystems, but it was also actively reducing carbon emissions. Even NASA satellite data picked up unusual greening patterns over the treated regions, with scientists coining the phenomenon micro-scale land resurrection. The barren plains were coming back to life, breath by silent breath. In some areas, rainfall even increased slightly due to local climate feedback. The re-emerged vegetation attracted moisture and cooled the air, creating microclimates where once there was only scorching heat. This localized effect showed that small-scale interventions could have far-reaching consequences, rewriting the very rules of desertification. By 2025, international researchers from Japan, Germany, and the US came to Australia to study what was being called the wool experiment that shocked the world. They found a working model for sustainable restoration, a simple, low-cost, nature-based solution that could be scaled anywhere on Earth. It required no complex machines, no proprietary chemicals, no high-tech systems, only patience, trust in biology, and wool. The story spread fast. Documentaries aired across the world, showing barren deserts turning into fields of green under the same skies that once burned with drought. Global agencies, long focused on industrial solutions, began to take notice. Could this be the future of dryland recovery, using what we already have rather than what we invent? For the scientists behind the project, the answer was clear and undeniable. Nature doesn't waste, one lead researcher said in an interview, looking out over a restored pasture. It just waits for us to notice what's possible. Today, across hundreds of thousands of hectares, the land glows with a soft, vibrant green under the Australian sun. The wool beneath the soil has vanished, decomposed completely, but its legacy remains woven into the very earth. The soil is darker, richer, alive with the hum of microorganisms. Kangaroos and birds have returned to graze where there was only silence and dust for generations. What started as an act of desperation became one of the most elegant examples of natural engineering in human history. And in the process, it proved something profound, that healing the planet doesn't always mean inventing new technology. Sometimes it means remembering what nature already designed perfectly. A thread of wool, humble, forgotten, and ancient, had done what science alone could not. It rewove life back into the fabric of the earth.